Honorable guests, ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure to welcome you to the fourth International Symposium on Cinema and Philosophy. I am so pleased to be with you today and have the chance to introduce our keynote speaker, Tarja Laine. Dr. Tarja Laine is Assistant Professor of Film Studies at the University of Amsterdam and Adjunct Professor at the University of Turku, Finland. She is the author of Emotional Ethics of the Hunger Games, Bodies in Pain, Emotion and the Cinema of Darren Aronofsky, Feeling Cinema, Emotional Dynamics in Film Studies, and Shame and Desire, Emotion, Intersubjectivity, Cinema. Her research interests include cinematic emotions, film aesthetics, and film phenomenology. In addition, she works as a visual artist. Besides all that, she's a wonderful person. She's going to make a speech with the title, Popular Cinema as Film Philosophy, the Case of the Hunger Games franchise. Without further ado, please welcome Dr. Tarja Laine. Hello, Tarja.
I start screen share if I can, but I can somebody make me a host so that I can share you my PowerPoint.
I'll tell them. You are the host actually.
Okay.
If you can
why
share
can't
it.
I share my screen? Sorry about this. I don't know what I'm doing wrong.
That's fine.
I'm sorry. I don't know what I should do now.
Okay. Is there a share screen button at the bottom of the
yes.
page? All right.
But it doesn't work.
It doesn't work.
Can I send my PowerPoint to someone who can share it on my behalf?
All right, you can send us if you'd like.
Okay, yeah.
You can send it to us on email.
Yeah.
You can use the ones that we always communicated.
Yes. Okay, this is awful because the file is too large. I can't share it. I can't send it.
All right.
So
you can also.
Oh, now can I share? Yes, it's working. Yeah.
It's working. Good.
Yes.
Great.
Okay. Wonderful. Sorry, I'm very sorry about this. I don't know what happened, but now I seem to be. okay with this. Just
This seems fine to us if you would like.
Okay. Now it should be okay. Yes. Okay. Thank you very much for your patience. I'm very sorry about this this delay.
Thank you.
But now I can start. So the subject matter is emotions as sources for ethical knowledge in the hugely popular The Hunger Games film series. The films take place in the post-apocalyptic state of Panem, which is a political dystopia defined by social and economical inequality, imprisonment, slavery, and other forms of extremely cruel oppression of underprivileged groups. Panem can also be characterized as a society of the spectacle, which is a concept by which this totalitarian society attempts to masquerade its dystopic nature. The narrative premise of the series is anchored in the yearly event known as the Hunger Games, organized by the wealthy capital. It consists of randomly selecting 24 tributes amongst the teenagers from the oppressed districts of Panem to participate in a brutal gladiator-style death battle until there is one sole victor. Viewing is mandatory, often in public, both for the shearing, bloodthirsty, colorful audience in the capital and for the quiet, fearful, passive crowds in the districts. One of the philosophical questions that the films pose considers the meaning of watching the spectacle of others suffer. This is famously asked by Susan Sontag, who wrote that people have become less responsive to the pain of others, I quote, because a steady diet of images of violence have made them indifferent. Imagery that would have had an audience cringing and recoiling in disgust 40 years ago is watched without so much as a blink by every teenager in the multiplex. Indeed, mayhem is entertaining rather than shocking to many people in most modern cultures. An intriguing paradox seems at the series. On the one hand, the films are not meant to be mere action thrillers insofar as they denounce violent entertainment in media and cinema in general. On the other hand, the Hunger Games films clearly turn out to be action thrillers, all of them using violence as a major narrative element, being highly entertaining as well as spectacular in every sense of the word. As an example, I present the game's finale from the first installment of the series.
Shoot. And we both go down and you'd win. Go on. I'm dead anyway. I always was, right? I didn't know that till now. How's that? Is that what they want? Huh? Huh? No. Nah. I can still do this. I can still do this. One more kill. It's the only thing I know how to do. Bring... Not that it matters.
This spectacular scene climaxes with bloody-faced Cato bursting into a pathetic monologue while holding Peter in a rear arm choke, urging Katniss to shoot. The function of this his outburst is to redirect our attention from the action to reflection on the dystopic reality that forces the tributes to kill for their lives. Even though the spectacular elements in the scene primarily address our sensory motoric faculties, their significance is contextualized in emotional ethics concerning the justification of killing for survival. For Cato's death is not ethically justified, and both Katniss and Peeta know this to be so. Furthermore, the scene draws attention to the difference between non-diegetic and diegetic audiences. Here, the diegetic audience, the audience in the capital, is demanding pain and death. This audience is the they in Cato's monologue for which he hitherto has performed. By contrast, the non-diegetic audience, the spectators of the film, are potentially invited to reflect on their viewing position. In their own way, the Hunger Games films ask the same question posed by Sontag. Are we, as viewers, desensitized or provoked by the depiction of violence? This is how our emotions push the limits of our viewing position, which becomes an insightful thought experiment. I argue that the philosophical relevance of the Hunger Games films has to do with the way in which emotions function as a source of ethical knowledge, both within and beyond their cinematic world. These emotions are incorporated in the thematic and aesthetic organization of the Hunger Games films, reflecting a crisis in moral standards, while cultivating ethical attitudes towards such phenomena as totalitarianism, the culture of reality television, and the society of the spectacle. There is an intrinsic connection between emotions and ethics, which can be expressed through cinematic means in a way that confronts us with complex moral dilemmas, enriching our aesthetic experience. As Beres Gout writes, I quote, cognitive affective perspective on its represents a perspective that invites the audience to react emotionally to the scenes and characters it describes. And given the importance of emotions to any ethical education as well, emotional responses to represented events form a powerful means of ethical illumination in art. End of quote. But if ethical education through the agency of cinematic emotion is commonplace, can cinema still be seen as a specific form of philosophical inquiry? Given that most films compel us to feel emotions and that many of them contain ethical dilemmas of sorts, the question arises to what extent cinema in general and the Hunger Games series in particular can be seen as philosophically relevant. My view is that a film is philosophical when its aesthetic specificity embodies a thoughtful insight, which can be felt and understood organically from within the cinematic experience and which can be described and shared with others. As Robert Sinnerberg puts it, this type of film philosophy, I quote, avoids assuming that there is a ready-made conceptual framework or theoretical approach that should be applied to a film to reveal its meaning, or alternatively, which the film is supposed to illustrate. Instead, it sustains a receptiveness to what film aesthetically discloses, an engagement with the aesthetic elements of the film and the reflection it inspires. This kind of responsiveness to the film's forms of aesthetic disclosure involves consideration not only of its narrative aspects, but its audiovisual rhythms, hermeneutic ambiguities, and capacity to both enact and evoke affective forms of thought. End of quote. Emotions play a central role in the context of cinematic ethics, since moral evaluations regularly arise from one affectively sensing one's own possibilities for suffering and pain, as well as one's own capacity of hurting others while responding affectively to others' distress. It is on this self-other relation that our ethical disposition is grounded, and understanding moral values requires sensitivity to both self-directed and other-directed emotions. As such, the victory tour scenes in Catching Fire present a conflict between self-directed and other-directed concern.
Candace and I want to share with you our victory and our gratitude to the Capitol for bringing us together. It was the bond of love, forged in the crucible of the games, that was our greatest prize. For it is love, and true love, that allows us all to bear our hardships, that mends the heart and banishes loneliness and gives meaning to our lives.
We also want to share with you the sorrows of your losses, the tributes of this. The tributes of this district were great and noble warriors. They brought honor to their families and pride to their people.
Dr. Laine, I guess there is a problem with the video, or there is a connection problem. I guess there is a connection problem, so...
Oh, apparently. Oh, goodness. Now I lost also the screen share. Okay, I hope it will come back. I will just continue. So in this scene, there is a visual juxtaposition between Katniss and Peeta acting out Capitol propaganda as if they were reciting drilling manuals on the one hand, and the angry district audience is forced to witness the phony spectacle on the other. Katniss and Peeta's fabricated performance is designed to demonstrate to the people of Panem that their motives during the games were out of love and not out of defiance against the Capitol. It even includes a proposal of marriage, which can be seen as epitomizing self-directed concern executed to protect themselves and their loved ones. Furthermore, their performance is designed to prevent rebellious escalation and civilian causalities in the districts emanating other directed concern. Problematically, their strategy only further enrages the district's audiences, who feel that Katniss and Peeta's ethical concern aimed at maintaining the status quo is in conflict with another ethical political concern, namely change in the districts. This is why Katniss and Peeta's victory tour fails in its function to support and to celebrate the totalitarian power of the capital. The proper place of emotions within moral philosophy has been subject of debate for a very long time. Emotions are more often than not seen as obstacles to ethical thinking, leading us astray, producing motives that conflict with moral reasoning and which undermine our ethical integrity. This is why some emotions, such as contempt, jealousy, and pride, are vices rather than virtues. That emotions cannot function as a source of moral knowledge is related to the concept of emotion as interfering with logical thinking. Emotions supposedly undermine our rational agency due to the intrusive and unstable nature of affective experience. Since emotions are not outcomes of logical information processing, one may feel that one is not in control of one's emotions, which is a reason why the role of emotion in ethical life has been discounted. On the other hand, emotions such as love and compassion lie at the very heart of ethical thinking, insofar as they embody a perception of the value of others, sensitizing us towards the other's needs. Even negative emotions such as guilt, shame, and pride could be grounded in ethical consciousness, since they are modes of self-assessment that play a significant in the development of moral integrity. Furthermore, emotions which are often considered immoral, such as anger, contempt, and resentment, can actually fulfill an ethical purpose by alerting us to social injustices, demanding solutions to moral problems, and making ethical claims. The retrieval of emotion as an important dimension is in rational thinking and ethical action, owes to the work of philosophers such as Martha Nussbaum and Robert Solomon, who argue that emotions are rational and purposive rather than irrational and disruptive, or often even more insightful than the calm deliberations we call reason. But even neurobiology has shown that emotion actually assists reasoning, activating that decision-making sector in our brain where the intellect can operate most efficiently. The argument that emotions are rational, importantly linked to individual agency and decision-making, has facilitated the restoration of emotion in ethical philosophy. Therefore, emotions can reinforce moral perceptions by supplying motivational force to one's ethical value judgment so that one feels compelled to undertake moral action against wrongful treatment of others, such as in the following scene from Catching Fire, which I hope to be able to share. Yes, it's there. So Okay, this is the previous one, so we will just skip that because I already discussed it. So, oh, sorry. This is the one that I want to show at this point. No.
Kenneth, it's okay. Just go. It's okay.
Move. You want another?
Go ahead.
Whoa, 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 whoa. Get out of my way.
You don't want to shoot her.
How about I shoot both of you?
Look, Commander, you're new here. Trust me, I'm trying to help you. I'm Hamish. You recognize her? Katniss Everdeen, darling of the capital.
She interfered with a peacekeeper.
I never said she was smart. Look, you already got a couple of lashes in, right?
That's not good enough. She's an agitator.
Easy, easy. Look, you sure Snow wants 3 dead victors here? Because that's what we're looking at. It's bad enough that you marked up her face on the eve of the big wedding. Let it go. And we will too.
All right. But next time, it's the firing squad.
Excellent idea.
I don't care who she is.
Clear the square! You're all under curfew! Anyone out after dark will be shot on sight!
Get him out of here.
Thus, when Katniss in this scene throws herself in front of the Peacekeeper's whip to save Gale from further scourging, she does not intellectually contemplate the situation first, only then to decide it would be morally appropriate to intervene. Instead, her emotions function as higher order reasons, which pressure her to act immediately, with feet flying. Similarly, in the cinematic experience, we do not first become aware of the relevant non-emotional ethical standards of right and wrong, and then feel the appropriate emotion. By contrast, our emotions alert us to these ethical standards by immediately registering the affective valence of the cinematic event, thereby building awareness of the appropriate moral reasons in our experience of the event. However, within the context of emotional ethics, one important question concerns the role of emotions when moral reasons are authoritative. Even though this question lies outside the scope of this talk, a brief recapitulation of the two positions in the debate seems relevant. On the one hand, the rationalist position holds that moral reasons bind us with authority because they are universally normative, independent from external factors such as emotions and beliefs. However, the problem with the rationalist model is that it fails to explain how individuals are driven by moral reasons. On the other hand, the position of moral sentimentalism understands moral evolution purely in emotional terms and considers emotions as the beginning of ethical life and the source of moral judgment. Since moral reasons originate in emotions, they have direct motivational power. Yet, this argument fails to explain adequately how moral reasons commands with genuine authority beyond subjective feelings and individual preferences. To this debate, I offer as my hybrid solution that an emotion is not an external factor in ethical deliberation, but neither are emotions the primary source of moral knowledge. Rather, emotions are constitutive of moral thinking and vice versa, insofar as in the subjective experience, emotion and ethical judgment constantly modify each other in negotiation. In the cinematic experience, too, our emotional and our ethical faculties both play a role as we evaluate the salience of filmic events aesthetically and meaningfully in a way that bypasses the actions of fictional characters facing these events.
Recording in progress.
So after the final installment of the Hunger Games series, a deforestation in the Amazon rainforest surged under President Bolsonaro of Brazil. A referendum was held to allow President Putin of Russia to run for 2 more presidential terms. President Trump sent federal paramilitary forces to Portland, Oregon, to end the Black Lives Matter protest he described as anarchy, and in Belarus, thousands of people were arrested for demonstrating against sitting President Lukashenko, whom the media described as the last European dictator. It is not surprising that recent texts abound in which the dystopian world of the Hunger Games is associated with real-world events. In my understanding, the Hunger Games remains a most relevant dystopia for the contemporary world. The Hunger Games background was actually used in May 2014 during the military coup in Thailand, where the 3-finger salute of resistance became the unofficial symbol of opposition. Similarly to the Hunger Games, in Thailand, the salute showed solidarity towards the protesters that were fighting against what they considered to be an unlawful military-led government. As a result, the military junta in Thailand threatened to arrest anyone who used salute in similarity to President Snow, who, as the leader of Panem, prohibited all images referring to the Mockingjay. Similarly, the 3-finger salute was used in a struggle against the authoritarian regime in Hong Kong in 2019, which escalated into a long-lasting confrontation with the authorities, in which demonstrators insisted on democratic rights and independence from the Beijing rule. In response to these conflicts between civilians and police, 2 Hong Kong activists published an opinion piece, which started with the famous Hunger Games slogan, "If we burn, you burn with us." "If we burn, you burn with us" is the line with which Katniss addressed President Snow after she has witnessed a destruction of the makeshift hospital at his direct orders, filled with wounded civilians. And today, the 3-fingered salute is spreading in Myanmar, a symbol of resistance against the military coup that ousted the democratically elected members of the government. The fact that symbols and gestures from the Hunger Games actively up by protesters demonstrates that it embodies more complex meanings that is expected from young adult fiction in more elitist views of literature and moving image culture, in which this genre is often trivialized and dismissed. This talk was given out of the conviction that the Hunger Games series is indeed worthwhile subject matter in the context of ethical film philosophy. In the end, I hope to have demonstrated that dealing with emotions is necessary to fashion and evaluation of ethical values, not only in the Hunger Games series in particular, but also in the more general cinematic experience. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Laine, for this marvelous talk. I guess we will have some questions for you now because we are at the discussion part. We can have the questions. The first question comes from Özeros Kantar. What do you think about the use of oxymorons utilized in cinema as an emotional tool? What do you think of creating binary oppositions in the emotions with the help of cinematic techniques? So the question is about oxymorons and binary oppositions as tools in cinema.
I think that they are very interesting. I think that they are actually the salt of the cinematic experience, because usually, very often, such oxymorons and paradoxes and binary oppositions, they also, at the same time, they are oxymorons, they are paradoxical because they embody some ethical conflict, which invites us reflect and react and sides and contemplate whether or not there are easy solutions for such paradoxes, which usually are not. It invites us questions rather than finding answers. So yeah.
Thank you. Any other questions? And the second question is about the concept that you pronounce like cinematic emotion. So, what is cinematic emotion in very shortly, in your own words?
Very shortly. Well, cinematic emotion is a complicated matter. And it is very often associated with the notion of identification, identification with the character. Often when we watch a film, and whether or not the film is successful in engaging our emotions is often connected with the extent to which we can relate to the characters. So and that is also an important part in the cinematic emotion. It means an interaction between the film and the cinema. So cinematic emotion is not merely an emotion that is being depicted in the film or represented in the film or expressed in the film, and the cinematic emotion is neither merely a question of our decoding such emotional expression as spectators. It is a question of interaction. It is and it's a two-way system. It has to do with the way in which film invites us into its world, but it is also a question of how we observe the film in our own world. And film characters play an important role in this process because we tend to share the emotions or respond to the emotions of the characters that we consider, for instance, morally virtuous. This is the Murray Smith's argument, by the way. But it is not only dependent on the characters, because cinema has also expressive elements that can convey and embody emotions on their own right, which is actually what I think is more interesting than on our engagement with the characters. So it's a complicated issue. To give a short answer, which I didn't, that it is a question of interaction, affective interaction between the cinema and the spectator.
Yeah,
as a two-way system.
That was great. And the second question is about the same thing, actually. So you said cinematic emotion is an encounter between the cinema work and the audience. And what do you think about the audience position in this ethical responsibility?
Yes, this is a very, very good question. And I have to immediately clarify that when I talk about the spectator, I am not necessarily referring to the spectator of flesh and blood, the audiences, concrete audiences in the film theater. I am talking about the spectator as in a more abstract sense, as a position in the film text, because in my view, all films imagine an ideal spectator whom they then address. And this spectator is a sort of construct in the film as an aesthetic or film text, if you like. So it is the imaginary spectator. It's a more or less like an abstract concept, but it can be analyzed by observing closely the aesthetic choices that the filmmaker has made and the emotional reaction that these aesthetic choices aim to evoke. So this is my understanding of
Thank you
of the spectator
for this great answer. And there is another question from Professor Serdar Öztürk. Emotions in popular movies can be evaluated in a cathartic way. In modern cinema, like Robert Bresson and Antonio's films, film directors evade themselves, showing emotions clearly. On the contrary, audience can be bored with these images. What do you think about this?
I am not sure if I now understood the question correctly. Does it have to do with catharsis?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Not all the films have catharsis. Yes, it is absolutely right that many films contain a catharsis of sorts, emotional closure, if you like, but many films do not. And I think personally that the films that deny the spectator catharsis are most interesting ones, because those are the films that stay with you for a long time after the film has finished. They start to haunt you, actually. So they have a longer life in your personal experience than the films that have a clear emotional closure and catharsis, I think. And I think that you mentioned Bresson. I think this is what Bresson's films do. I don't think they contain a catharsis. They deny a catharsis. That's their point from the emotional point of view, which is why his films are so effective. And also philosophical, adds to their philosophical dimension.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Laine, for this great contribution. And we are done with our questions now. And we wish you the best. Thank you again.
Thank you very
for
much.
everything.
Have a
All
good
right.
conference.
All right. Thank you. See you.